Yes, good morning. My name is Ciaran Moynihan. I'm with Ireland's Emergency Call Answering Service. I'm also a member of EENA's Technical and Operations Committee, so I'd like to thank Freddie and Kristina for inviting me to chair this morning's session on eCall today and tomorrow. It's a subject of particular interest to me. I've been working with eCall for many years, as I'm sure have many of you. So from fairly slow beginnings, I think, would have been our experience in 2018 and even earlier for third-party eCall. I'm sure many of you will have seen the volumes of eCalls grow in your service. And with that, we'll have seen the value of these calls and the associated data we receive with them. Now we're faced with a situation of where is eCall today? What is the current state of eCall, and what is the future for eCall? So our speakers this morning are going to talk to us about that, and I'm sure you'll have lots of questions for them afterwards, but without further delay, I think I'll just hand over to our first presenter this morning from France's EMA Group, Antoine Trarieux.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. And first of all, thank you to the EENA for offering this opportunity of presenting you some figures about eCall activity in France. And first, a couple of words regarding the EMA Group I represent today. Maybe you don't know. EMA Group has a 40 years long experience in services, assistance services. We are an independent player, as we are, our shareholders are 14 mutual insurance companies coming from France and European countries. So we are mostly Western Europe implemented, also Northern Africa and the United States. Some figures about the group. So we are handling about 13 million calls per year. So mostly vocal call, indeed. 45 million beneficiaries worldwide. We are the second assistance provider on the French market and the fourth in the international market. The main point for us as a quality of service, of course, is satisfaction of customers. It's easy because we are providing definitely assistance provide services on spot in real time. That it's a good way of providing customer satisfaction. So the ratio for 2021 was 94.7 on the roadside and well-being activities. And if I made a focus on connected services, so we have been operating the third-party supported eCall for these last 20 years. We began in 2003. And we are eCall PSAP since 2017 on behalf of the French government. And also, we have launched several experimentations and some small activities, especially dedicated to motorcyclists in France. So the most famous is Liberty Rider, which is an application dedicated to riders, but several other subjects which are dedicated to safety of motorbikers. Technical environment. So we have basically, we are operating through one single technical platform in our main office, okay, which is, of course, redundant and secured, tested and secured. And then this technical platform will dispatch the alerts to several local platforms, operational platforms in the various countries, as you have seen before. So this is the way we are dealing today. So in this example, you've got one platform in Germany, one in Spain, we have one in Portugal, Belgium for the Benelux, and France, of course, and so on, Italy. So these local service platforms will provide assistance, so emergency call, breakdown call for roadside assistance, connected roadside assistance, and of course connection with local PSAPs. Second point is the external environment. External environment means that we have connection and interoperability. We have developed interoperability with PSAPs, so in certain countries. In France, 30% of the PSAPs are already connected with the EMA platform, so in a data way, in a data mode. We have also developed, since these last 10 years, interconnection with the highway control rooms. It's something very specific in France. when you've got a breakdown or an accident on the highways, you have to go to the orange box. You have to walk to the orange box. It seems amazing today, but it's still a matter of fact. And so we developed some connectivity and interoperability with the highway control rooms for all toll highways in France, and it works very well. So this is another kind of interoperability with external partners environment. And of course, then the PSAP can push their emergency services on the spot. So voice and data are the characteristic, of course, of connected services. This activity represents 150,000 emergency calls last year and 250,000 breakdown calls also, okay, to give you some figures, which is very low according to the 3 million cases we are handling by year. It's less than 10, it's about 10%, but it's interesting anyway. What now about our major subject, which is the feedback regarding the 112 PSAP eCall in France? First of all, the infrastructure, the telematic platform is very similar to the EMA one. So we have one single technical platform again, which is dispatching the alerts, eCall alerts, in case of an accident or a manual triggered eCall. It will dispatch the alerts to several operational screening platforms. So these platforms are operated by various assistance companies on behalf of the SNSA, who has signed the convention with the French government. So we wanted to make it as a cooperative way. And we built a kind of ecosystem with 9 assistance companies supported by 75 insurance companies who are paying for these platforms to be operated. So it's free for the government, it's free for the users. Okay, of course, it's an eCall. And then these platforms, each operational platform, like EMA1, will be connected to the local PSAP, if possible, with a data mode, if not, just with vocal long numbers. Okay, and then once again, the end of the story is in case of emergency, rescue services or emergency services will go on spot for intervention. The characteristic of this platform, first of all, we opened on the 1st of October 2017, so we're just on time. France was on time online with the European regulation on this stage. Second point, we wanted to get a minimum of impact for PSAP organization. In fact, as you have seen before, a company like EMA already had some connections with the PSAPs, data connection with the PSAP. We have a specific standard in France. Not all the PSAP in France are able to get this connection, but as soon as they are ready for that, we are proposing to get this interoperability, data interoperability. Of course, data means more reliable. It fastens the alerts, and it gave it more reliable. If I take just in single information, like if you are on a highway, are you going on one direction or the other direction? If I give it with a vocal link, I would say on one case upon maybe 1,000, there will be a mistake. I will say northward instead of southward, because it's just human. If I push the data is reliable. So this is the way we are operating, and we want to push this more and more with the PSAPs. Scalability of the solution, because as I have said, we are operating at 3 platforms at the moment, which means that if one failed, the others can take the activity. But of course, there are 9 assistant companies in France which are potentially able to push the service. It's not the case at the moment. Maybe there will be a 4th one. It's enough for a couple of years. But okay, if necessary, we can guarantee the scalability of the solution. Conformance to national and EU regulation, indeed. So we have specific habilitation from the French Ministry of Interior and Health. And of course, we are compliant with the EU regulation. That's basically, it's attested by every 2 years we have a specific audit of our systems and of the chain by DECRA on behalf of the French government to be ensured that we are compliant with this regulation. Enhanced services to citizens, what does it mean? When we opened the discussion with DigiMove, with the EU, European Commission 10 years ago, we came with the experience of third-party service eCall, private eCall. And in our experience, when you have an airbag burst in a car, in 2 cases upon 3, there is nobody injured. No one is injured inside the vehicle. Because, of course, the airbag means secondary security. Okay, you can't avoid the accident, but you can avoid injuries. And eCall is coming at the 3rd level. And in this case, in these 2 cases upon 3, the point is that you don't need any emergency services. But anyway, the car can't go ahead by its own. There is a need for roadside assistance. There is a need for towing service. So, in accordance with the decision of 2014 from the Council and the Parliament, European Parliament, which took this point into consideration in the decision, we agreed with the French government that in case there is nobody injured in the vehicle, so no need for emergency services, we can propose the driver to push a notification to his assistance company, roadside assistance company. We are not providing the service. But if he needed, and if he wanted, it's upon its decision, of course, the customer decision, we can push a notification to the roadside assistance service. And of course, we have all the relevant data. We have the location, precise location of the car. We have the description of the car, description of the event. We have all the needed information to push this notification. So this is just an additional service we are pushing to the citizens. And of course, avoiding new accidents, because of course, when an event came on the public road, the first thing is to protect also the other drivers. Last point, of course, accreditation by the French ministries, as I said before. So this is basically the scheme that you have here. It's an EENA way of presenting the thing. In France, so 112 eCall is going direct. 112 calls are coming directly to the 112 PSAP. And for the 112 eCall, it comes to the eCall PSAP, which is operated by the assistant companies that we are operating. And then we dispatch the relevant alerts to the local PSAP, 112 PSAP. Okay? What about the figures? Here you got the 3 last years of activities. First of all, yes, it's growing, indeed. Okay, the equipment of light vehicles is increasing, but it's not much yet. We consider that at the end of 2021, about 5% of the light vehicles in Europe were equipped with an eCall system. It's good, but not much. Of course, also, you will see the effect of containment on the activity. Well, you've got the first confinement, second confinement, and other restrictions of circulations, of traveling, which of course impact our activity. This impact is a good impact for public safety. 2020 was a very good year for road safety in all our countries, and we are very happy with this, of course. But it just means that we follow this kind of activity. You will see also, I'll come back further on the impact of 2020 with people driving, I think, more carefully than before this year. But unfortunately, it's not going on in France. So these are the main figures I can push you. And if I want to enter in details, I'll give you some clues, some key to understand the situation. First of all, the volumes of calls received by the SNSA platform. And you will see that the first level, we have a first level screening at this stage. When we receive the emergency calls, we make a screening for redundant eCalls. When we are talking about eCall, we are talking about Internet of Things. When you put a box with a possibility of triggering an alert, wherever it is, in a house, something for well-being in a car, you will get 90% of false alerts. And you've got the risk of getting something which doesn't function well. So this is the first level, is a screening of these redundant alerts. So if I take the example of 2021, so we received at the entrance gate of the platform 85,000 calls, and only 75,000 were dispatched definitely to the operators. Okay. The gross ratio is almost 70%, which can't seem important, but as we are talking about road safety, it's not much. We are expecting higher and swifter deployment of the eCall services. Then, what about real emergency situations? It may seem rather poor, but okay. On the 75,000 alerts in 2021, less than 4,000 concern the PSAP. Suspected emergency situations. Okay, and we made a study with the French Ministry of Interior to get an idea of the precision of this screening. And the first conclusions, they were not published, but I can give them to you because we are at the EENA Congress, was that 75% of the alerts which were dispatched by the SNSA were compliant with the PSAP regulation. And 75% is good, it's enough, because of course in certain cases we don't have the habilitation of deciding whether or not it's a real emergency. It relies to the PSAP. Our role is only to make this screening of real alerts or false alerts. Okay? So the ratio of non-emergency calls, obviously, at the time, is about 95%. It's a little bit too much. As I said, we are expecting 90%. We can have also the feedback from Bosch for private eCall activity, but usually we consider that the ratio is around 90%. A little less or a little more depending on the quality of the devices, but this is a fact. And so, okay, this is a ratio, filtering ratio. And I talk about the roadside assistance needs, okay? And you've got also the figures for roadside assistance. It's important. Once again, it's not much, but for these people, it's something like a new service, additional service, easy. It's a seamless customer journey because we already have all the data. We push all the data, relevant data, of course, to the roadside assistance company, and they can provide the service on the spot. So this is a better service, enhanced services for the drivers. Some remaining questions because I've got some remaining minutes. First of all, indeed, we are concerned by the end of the 2G, 3G. As you know, the protocol for eCall now is an in-band modem based on 2G, 3G. We already have 15 million vehicles on the road in Europe equipped with this kind of in-vehicle systems. Before the next standard will come into entrance, it will be 30 million. So we have to face and to find solutions to face this hybrid situation we will have to cope with for this coming 15 years. This is not an issue, but this is a point of intention, of course, which is taken into account at the European Committee of Standardization. We also are very cautious on the PSAP point of view to avoid the risk of having two alerts coming from the same IVS. I mean, an IVS which will attempt to trigger an alert with an in-band modem, for example, doesn't have the right, he has an acknowledge, technical acknowledge, but not sure that all the MSD, all the data has been pushed. And so it could try to launch another emergency call with a new protocol. First circuit switch, second packet switch. And we want to avoid this. We want to avoid that to get some double alerts to the PSAP for the same event. Our position as a standardization committee is to say, as soon as you receive an acknowledgement from the PSAP organization, leave us, and we will do our job. We will call back the vehicle, we'll get the relevant information, and we will do our job. So, second point, screening of emergency situations relies on vocal link indeed. My friend Vassil will talk after about callback situation, so I don't want to develop this, but this is of course a point of attention for us. And the last one is the extension of 112 eCall to new categories of vehicles. Indeed, it's a good idea, indeed. But we want also to be cautious, and this is also the position of other companies involved in this activity, to get a right benefits cost ratio analysis before deciding to enhance the eCall services to new categories of vehicles. Maybe there are other solutions already on the market which can prove more efficient than the 112 eCall. So yes, but not without any study before. I wanted to leave some seconds for questions. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antoine. I think we probably... No time for questions? Okay, in that case, we'll hand over directly to Vassil Krastev from the ECO, the European Communications Office. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Just a second, okay. Yes, same as Antoine, I would like to thank the EENA team for inviting me today, and especially to Kristin and Freddie for having me here as a speaker. And I will, the next slide, I will briefly outline what our organization is about. So I will present to you who we are, what we do, and how we are structured, which then will lead me to the description of our working group on numbering and networks and some of our relevant deliverables related to numbering and emergency communications. Then I will briefly introduce you to the assignment of some numbering resources. Of course, not all of them, because there are a lot, but to at least two which are relevant to the topic today. And then what kind of numbers are assigned to eCall. And then we will have a look at some of our latest relevant deliverables, the ECC recommendation 1704 and the draft ECC report 339 on eCall callback issues and callback functionality. And then we'll have the final conclusions and takeaways. So what is CEPT? It's a French title, which my French is terrible, I cannot pronounce, so, but basically it means the European Conference of Postal and Telecommunications Administrations. It was established in 1959, and its activities include cooperation on commercial, operational, regulatory, and technical standardization issues. And in 1988, CEPT created ETSI, where all of the telecommunication standardization activities were transferred. So today we have 46 member countries, the 27 member states of the EU, plus 19 non-EU countries. And CEPT has three autonomous committees, the ECC, which considers and develops policies in electronic communications activities in a European context. Then we have SERP, which is dealing with postal policy matters, and the COM-ITU is the third committee, which is responsible for organizing and preparation of CEPT actions for ITU conferences like the Plenipotentiary Conference, the World Telecommunications Development Conference, and the World Telecommunications Standardization Assembly. So, as I said, the ECC organized into working groups and project teams. They all work together to develop deliverables such as reports, recommendations, and decisions. And the ECO, where I work, is the permanent office of CEPT. We are based in Copenhagen, Denmark, and we provide support to the three business committees, technical administrative support, not only on the numbering side, but also on spectrum engineering and frequency management. And the value of our work is recognized when our deliverables afterwards are used to inform policy decisions and recommendations initiated by the EU and their institutions. So as I mentioned, ECC is organized into working groups, and ECC working group on numbering and networks is responsible for developing policies in numbering, naming, addressing, and advising on technical regulatory matters to promote the telecom innovation and competition. The working group has three project teams which work on different topics. NN1 is dealing with numbering issues, And then 2 is number portability and switching, trust in numbering and network technology regulatory issues. And we have the third one, NN3, which is dealing with emergency communications. We have a strategy forum group, and we have good working relationships with EU bodies and other European institutions like, for example, ETSI, BEREC, and so here you can also see I have listed just a fraction of our deliverables. With the first one already can be regarded as historical from 1972, and but I'm not gonna list all of them or like name them for the sake of time. But I would like to point out the 2 which we will have a closer look at. As I mentioned, ECC recommendation 1704 on numbering for eCall, and the draft report on eCall callback functionality. So, but before that, I will briefly introduce you to some of to numbering resources, how they are assigned, because numbering is a key enabler for communication services. So this one is recommendation ITUT E.164, which provides the number structure and functionality for the 5 categories of numbers used for international public telecommunication. So we have numbers for geographic areas, global services, networks, group of countries, and resources for trials. The recommendation for each of the categories, it details the components of the numbering structure and the digit analysis required to successfully route the calls. So ITU assigns the country code, and then the national regulatory authorities are responsible for developing the numbering plan behind the country code for geographic area. And why this is important, you will see on the next slide. But first, we will have a look at second ITUT recommendation, which is E.212, which defines the international identification plan for public fixed and mobile networks and subscriptions. So the IMSI, basically, it's a unique subscription on a mobile network, and it's a very important identifier in the process of registration of devices on mobile networks. So, and what makes the IMSI so special? It is essential to facilitate national and international roaming, and once a subscriber has been identified on the network, then there is authenticating and registering to the mobile terminal and so on. And the difference to the previous number is that an IMSI, it cannot be dialed on the public networks, and it's not commonly visible by the subscriber. He would be not aware of this number. So why are those 2 numbers, numbering resources, so important? Because they are typically assigned to eCall. So each IVS SIM must be assigned 1.64 number to the provisioning provider, and then this number can be, as you see here, it can be either a global numbering resource directly assigned by the ITU with country code 882 and 883, or number from a national numbering plan, which would be typically a mobile number or an M2M number. So both national and global numbering resources, they're used as calling party numbers when the eCall device automatically calls the emergency number in the event of an accident. And these numbers need to be provisioned on the networks, particularly in Europe, and then passed between operators in a correct and dialable format to facilitate callback from the PSAP to the vehicle. So the next slide is to recap. So eCall needs those 2 numbers for network authentication registration to roam between the networks and to be able to make the call, and to present a valid CLI to the PSAP for callback. So yeah, I still have a lot of time, so good. So as I mentioned, I will present you the 2 of our ECC deliverables, with the first one being ECC recommendation 1704, numbering for eCall. So I've just listed some of the recommendations in the deliverable, which recommends that numbering resources regarding whether they're global or national numbering resources. They need to be provisioned on the communications networks, and then they need to be presented in a dialable and correct format to the PSAP to facilitate callback. And also, all mobile network operators are encouraged to notify the ECO of their numbering ranges used for eCall or planned to be used. And to that end, ECC recommendation 1704 has an annex, which you can see here on the slide, with a list of already assigned numbers, either national or global, which are currently used by the assignees for eCall. And it is in the interest of the assignees to raise awareness of these numbering ranges used for eCall. And the annex is updated periodically, and the assignees can notify the ECC of the numbering ranges used for eCall. And yeah, you can see here there is a notification form and then the current list of already notified number ranges. So the second deliverable is the ECC report 339 on eCall callback functionality. So it is a very important element of the eCall system because callback is necessary, for example, if the call is dropped during an eCall, or if the PSAP call taker needs to make a call back to the vehicle to request more information. So the purpose of our report was to identify and describe some of the main causes for eCall callback failure. And we have identified three main issues for eCall callback failure: that there is no CLI available with the eCall, and the CLI might be available but not correctly received by the PSAP. And the third one is that the CLI is correctly received but cannot be called back by the PSAP. So I've picked here one example from a case in Portugal, where the PSAP had a configuration in place which was limited to the 15 digits, but the CLI included also the prefix, the 00, and then ultimately 17 digits were sent, but the PSAP configuration could handle only 15, so the last two were dropped, and then this resulted that the PSAP could not call back the vehicle. But there has been a fix already implemented for this. And for the third one, for example, when the CLI is correctly received but cannot be called back, this might be the case if global numbering resources assigned by the ITU are used, and then there is a configuration in place which prohibits these numbers to be dialed from the PSAP service provider, or when there is a lack of awareness that such kind of numbers are used for eCall. And for each of the three categories, we identify in the report some solutions. For example, that the CLI, it needs to be valid and correctly displayed. We would need roaming agreements in place and correct configuration to facilitate the callback, and the SIM needs to be valid and correctly seated. So, so fast. So yes, this is the final slide of the presentation. So some of the conclusions and takeaways. So the most important thing is to raise awareness of the numbering resources that may be used for eCall, to open and route both resources, national and global numbering, global numbers. Then there is a need for cooperation of all the stakeholders, mobile operators, PSAPs, and the others involved in the supply chain, and the CLI needs to be presented valid and dialable format, and then to notify the ECO of the numbering ranges used for eCall. Yeah, I was faster than I expected. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vassil. Yes, indeed, it was very interesting and actually very useful to learn about the background. We just treat these as numbers, so useful to learn about the background and how they're assigned and where they come from. We have time for one or two questions for Vassil, if we have anyone in the audience. Yep, we have one here.
Good morning, and thank you for a good presentation there. Dialing out to these long numbers is the first challenge, but the second also includes cost, where some of these are charged to the PSAP as an international mobile call and can get very, very expensive if the call is progressed through. Is there any thought of controlling that cost?
Yes, thank you. That's a good question, and it is part of our ECC report on eCall Callback. We have a separate section which deals with exactly costs to the global numbering resources. And you're right, depending on the country, in some countries the costs are higher to those number ranges. And I left this commercial aspect actually from the presentation on the costs, but yes, it's up to the actually to the PSAPs to talk to the PSAP service provider and also to the national regulatory authorities to have some solution for costs. We in some countries, I don't remember exactly in which one, the PSAP they made progress in this regard. They were charged previously a very high cost, as you mentioned, but then they were reduced. But some countries are still facing this problem. That's correct.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions for Vassil? No, I have one myself, if that's okay. Sure. You mentioned the annex to the that contained the list of assigned ranges or known ranges that are used to originate eCalls. That's certainly news to me, and it's something I will be looking up after this. One of the issues that we may face is that we don't know if these numbers can be called back or numbers in these ranges can be called back. Certainly, it's been my experience where I asked the question, can we place a call to numbers in this range? I'm told, oh, absolutely. And then when you test it, you find, well, actually, oh yeah, we need to add this to whatever routing table. Has there been any consideration given to ensuring that for each of these ranges that one test number is available that PSAPs and emergency services can use to ensure that we can call back to all of these number ranges?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's why we're trying to raise awareness of these numbering ranges. So some time ago we issued at the ITUT Study Group 2, which is dealing with numbering, there was a notification from the TSBA that certain numbering ranges are used for eCall, and that's why I mentioned that the whole thing requires a cooperation among all the stakeholders to raise awareness. But there are, I'm not sure whether there are test number ranges where it can be tested whether they can be routed or not. So, yeah. Sorry if I cannot answer completely your question.
No, thank you. I think it's one for all of us to just check and follow up on, because this could be the ability to call back in some situations could mean life or death. So, thank you.
That's correct.
I think if we do have another question here from Marcus. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Marcus Bornheim from Avaya. And as we just have been talking about test numbers, it's maybe not the right point here because we're talking about eCall, but is there any idea on providing test numbers for the general 112 service? We as a solution provider, when we take something into service after full implementation, well, we would also like to do some testing, especially when we're talking about enterprise emergency calls. So people running an enterprise communication system who want to test if 112 services are working.
Yeah, I think that's a bit out of the scope of what we are doing. I think the solution providers, they should talk to the operators whether they can provide them with test numbers. So, yeah.
Would it be great maybe to catch up afterwards?
Yeah, but we can.
Offline,
We can. I can take this with me and discuss it in our groups, and we
Thank
can
you, Vassil.
consider. Yeah, thank you.
So I think we're very slightly ahead of time, which is great. So I'll hand over now to Anna Tyssen from Bosch Service Solutions to tell us about third-party eCall.
Is it on? Yeah. Oh, good. So hello, and thank you for having me here. After I think we have some interesting presentations about the shortcomings, but also the advancement of eCall, I would like to give another perspective that of yet another TPS. It's Bosch. And I would like to introduce our solution for the data transmission, which is actually quite known to all the PSAPs because it's in band. And yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So just a quick glance on the background of Bosch. We are actually known to end customers for the washing machines and drilling machines and whatever. For the PSAPs, we might be known for our alarm detection systems and video surveillance and everything. But what we actually do most of our business with is mobility. So I think there is hardly any car driving around in the world not having any component of Bosch. So this is where we actually came from. And of course, we do this globally. So we are, I think, in nearly every country in this world. And there are quite a few people of us. So. And this is, of course, then also reflected in our mobility services. So we are, I don't know, it's more than 57 countries, but I think it's roughly 57 countries that we are live with our mobility services. We have, I think in 22, it's now 30 million vehicles connected and more than 15 vehicle manufacturing customers. So this is quite a big service. If we look at the eCall provided from Bosch, of course, we're live also on a global perspective. So we're not only looking at the EU eCall here, but in the general eCall service that we deliver. The average response time is well below 10 seconds, but I think 10 seconds is the standard. So I think it's more like 2 or 3 seconds until we handle the call. Maybe interestingly, and this reflects also what Antoine was talking about before, we have roughly 2 million eCalls per year that we handle, but only 65,000 rescue teams interventions, meaning like we contact really, these 10% are really a good estimation. It's more like 5%, I have to admit. But it varies between countries and also between manual and automatic eCalls. So, all right. So, what about the coexistence of the TPS eCall and the 112 eCall in Europe? Well, we started with the service in 2012, so we have actually our anniversary this year. Of course, when we designed the eCall, we already anticipated the norms that would be coming. So, of course, we also the first time cars that we had under contract, they fulfill the EU eCall standards according to the norms. And of course, also the MSD that is sent is according to the standard. And yes, we get more data. I'll come to that later. We, as I said, experience that roughly 10% or below 10% of these calls that we receive are actually real calls that we have to forward to the PSAPs. So, and when you take the absolute numbers of 30 million cars, okay, this is for the whole world, but of course the majority is placed in Europe, because our customers are, of course, we have quite a few German OEM customers, so of course they're in the EU. We actually have more Bosch eCalls than 112 eCalls. So when the PSAPs have experienced an increasing volume, and this is exactly the other side for the 112 eCalls, they most of the times have just given a really small percentage of the whole eCalls, because of course we were already on the market, and only the new type approvals since 2018 got the 112 eCall if they had it, and if they hadn't, the TPS. So now we see that there is a steady increase, but it started at a very low volume with the 112 eCalls. And of course, they had used the same sensoring, so they have the same mistakes while pressing a button, they have the same rates with the 90%, more than 90% false alarms. So there is no difference between the TPS and the 112 eCall in this respect. What is different is that, of course, we have more information than the MSD. The MSD is really the minimum set as defined, and depending on what vehicle manufacturer we have under our contract, we have a really clear picture of what actually has happened in terms of airbag deployment, of severity of crash. So there's much more that we can pass to the PSAPs. How it is done, because I've heard there are some things on the market where there is an electronic voice telling this to the PSAP. No, there is actually one of our operators speaking to the PSAPs, and they will forward all the information that they have, starting from the MSD and then going on to the ASD, or maybe if they could talk to some of the casualties, then giving additional information. So what is the biggest challenge for us in this is really we have no data connection to the PSAPs as a standard, even though there have been named some examples in the norms. Nothing has come into existence yet, and this is really it's really a pity because especially when giving the GPS coordinates, you really lose a lot of time. And as Antoine already said, you have this human error, and there can be some really nasty results in that. So, giving you a quick overview, I actually took everything that is stated in the norms as well as the eCall router, where you have this decent red highlight, because this is of course the 112 standard, but nevertheless this really shows all the IT system solutions that you could have to do this in-band transfer. So of course an API is a really neat thing, because you can have like an end-to-end connection, and you have really everything you can pass on to the PSAP, including the ASD. The problem is, as I said, you have an end-to-end connection, and giving Germany alone, we have more than 230 PSAPs that we have to connect with. And believe me, they are, someone is shaking his head, but it's really a lot. So this is really not feasible. We do this in some parts of Europe, but not with the PSAP itself, but with some providers for data for the PSAP. So this is really a thing we can do, but it's a lot of effort. And then, of course, you also have the maintenance on both sides, which really doesn't make it to the most prominent solution. The web page, there have been several attempts, I think also in Italy and in some other countries, to provide a web page for TPS. So you can like connect and send the data there, but it never has come to existence. So at the moment we have nothing there. eCall Center, I actually haven't heard of anything that has been tried. And NG112, of course, is the next thing that we are waiting for. We are, of course, capable of doing this, and we are waiting until the PSAPs can do that, which will really open us a lot of possibilities. So then, coming to the last one, the eCall router. It's not as sexy as the as the data connection, but of course it works, yeah. And the infrastructure is implemented, so we tried this, and it works quite well. Just to give you a schematic overview how we do this. Of course, we do not call the 112, but we have long dial numbers throughout the world to call the PSAPs. And with this, we don't have an eCall flag as well. But what we can do, or what the PSAPs can do, they provide us with a long dial number directly pointing to the eCall router. So whenever our call comes in, the voice channel automatically detects the in-band tones that are being sent. And with this, we then can automatically come in the usual 112 eCall queue, and thus being at the dispatcher as in usual eCall. So this is quite neat. And really also on the dispatcher side, it's really nice because they have it in their CAD systems if they have an integrated eCall router. So with this, just to give you a quick overview, as I said before, we waited for some time if some standard would emerge throughout Europe. So we've invested quite some time and money to see if there are any things that might come in terms of a pilot. But then since the beginning of last year, we then decided that we will heavily invest in doing the in-band transmission, as we see that really the PSAPs can cope with this, and this is a really handy thing to do. So actually we're live with 8 countries. Like they're fully covered, so all PSAPs get our MSD, including Ireland. You see 3 big countries which have like a nice pattern. Those are the ones which are just a little bit more difficult because we don't have any central organization dealing with the PSAP technical infrastructure, or they do, but maybe it takes longer. So in Germany, actually, we have some PSAPs that are connected with IMBAT. We have some PSAPs that are connected via API. And unfortunately, we still have a lot that are not connected at all. This is really the truth, yeah. And this reflects also the French status. So, yeah, but I think we're on a good way. The red countries, they look so red, but actually we're in exchange with them. And I'm really looking forward, and I believe that during this year we will have much more green on this map. So yeah, it's really the most prominent solution that we do right now. So the pros and cons to establish in-band transfer with us as TPS. First of all, we will call you anyways. There is no way around this because we have to call you when we really have a verified emergency. There is no cost for you in doing this. You already have the routers installed, you have the infrastructure, so this is really neat. As I said before, most important is the transmission of the GPS coordinates, which really saves time and really minimizes any errors. You get the pre-filtered eCalls in your CAT systems, which is really nice. You have no false alarms, so your operators might be happy about that. And if operators are not used to handling eCalls because they just haven't received any so far, or very few, just like once a month, now they will get some. And of course, we also make sure that the operators get a decent training of where to look to on their operator screens, where to look for the MSD and to read the MSD right. So yeah, where are the cons? That was about it, and I'm really quick.
Thank you, Anna. And speaking from experience, I can't think of any cons either. It has worked really well. Are there any questions for Anna on the TPS eCall and in particular the MSD transmission from the audience?
Just do it.
No? Very clear. I have 1 or 2 questions myself. With the in-band data transmission and our experience of setting it up with yourselves was really, really good. It works really well, very simple to set up. But one thing that occurs to me is with the transmission of data, your operator previously would have just placed a call to our PSAP service and immediately connect and immediately start talking. So now when your operator needs to send a call to us, they send it to our long number, which points to our eCall in-band modem server. And there will be some delays, 10, 15 seconds. What's their experience been? Have they, does that 10, 15 seconds to transmit the data, does it seem like a long time to your operators?
Well, the thing is, we started with this, and in the beginning it was in fact like up to 15 seconds, which really caused a lot of trouble, and we had to adjust something in our operational systems, getting like a pop-up saying, please wait, data's being transmitted and everything. But we actually adjusted this, and now the transmission time is down to 2 seconds, which really is nothing. And I mean, sometimes the operators can still hear some do-do-dum, but they know it and they already see on the screen MSD data is being transmitted, so it's really not giving any hassle to the operators. It's a really neat thing, I have to say. Yeah.
Brilliant. I actually wasn't aware it had come down to 2 seconds. I must look at our eCall server sometime and look at the logs, but yeah.
I don't know your side, but...
No, that's fantastic. Thank you. Yeah. Are there any other questions for Anna? I'd encourage you to, start taking this data from Bosch. It is, it makes a real difference to, certainly to our PSAP operators, to have the location and the MSD transmitted. It's on their screen. It appears to them exactly as a 112 eCall does. And yeah, it's really, really useful. So do we have any other questions, or will we wrap it up at that? I can't see anyone. But okay then, I think we'll give you 4 minutes back, which is good because the next session, sorry, we'll give all of our presenters a round of applause, please. So yeah, the next sessions are starting immediately after this, so I'd encourage you to, if you're transitioning to the session on ensuring continuity of emergency service communications, that's in the track 1 room, and it's starting in 3 minutes, I believe. And if you want to attend the Strengthening the Engagement of Civil Society in Transforming the session, that is happening in this room directly after this. So thank you very much, everyone.